Hello, welcome back to my channel. And today I would like to talk to you about a book I finished just recently, and it is A Dog I Become Loathsome by Eric LaRocca. It was actually my first book by this author. I've never actually read anything by him, but I was very intrigued by this particular book and I decided to pick it up because it's a new release, and I just decided to form my opinion about maybe this author, just because sometimes from the one book you can have a bit of an idea about the writing style and if the way a writer writes his book works for you. And it was quite a roller coaster for me. Because for me personally, in terms of my horror reads, I prefer supernatural horror. But for me personally, this book was quite an unusual type of horror. Because from my experience, horror books roughly can be categorized in the supernatural horror and some sort of slasher horror. This book is about grief and the depth of human depravity. I would say it's more of a psychological horror, even though we have quite lots of gruesome scenes at the same time as well. It is quite a short book, and for me personally, I would categorize it into a novella rather than a novel, because in my edition, it is about 194 pages. So it is quite a relatively short book, but at the same time, it packs a lot and it definitely gives a punch. And there are already some rumors that there will be a movie based on this book. So if you are a horror movie fan, probably it makes sense for you maybe to pick this book up and check it before the movie release and probably form your opinion on it. But as already mentioned, this is a book about grief. And in this story, we have a main protagonist, Ashley, and he had a string of very tragic events in his life. His wife passed from cancer, and his 8-year-old son got abducted, and police is still trying to investigate the case and still hoping to find him. But as far as we can see, there is less and less hope of finding him alive. And these events deeply affected Ashley. And in order to process this grief, he took this pain and anger and turned it on himself and started transforming his physical appearance. He started modifying his body with piercing and other physical modifications in order to look monstrous as he feels inside. Because his grief is tainted by guilt. And the pain of this grief and guilt is killing him and transforming him from the inside. And in order to feel this transformation, he transformed his body in a physical way as well. Therefore, the name of this novella, A Dark I Become Loathsome, because Ashley feels that at night he transforms into a monster, because now he has a secret life of his own. In order to process his grief and at the same time to help people who find themselves in desperate situations when they start questioning their life, the futility of it, he created a ritual. He provides services to people who reach out to him online of a burial. He buries people in the grave for half an hour for them to go through this personal psychological transformation and to rediscover love for life. And at night, he goes on these secret adventures to help other people to discover this love for life, and he meets his customers online. But since Ashley is still battling his inner demons, there are lots of possibilities for something to go wrong in this ritual. And another thing that I already mentioned about this book, that this is book not only about the grief, but at the same time about depth of human depravity. And even though we have Ashley as our main protagonist, we have 3 stories in this short book. That's why I said that it actually packs a lot. So the main story of the book is Ashley and his grief and his attempts to find his son and his secret rituals with his customers. But at the same time, we encounter 2 other sub-stories. They are relatively short, but don't be mistaken, they will leave a very deep impact on you. In one of the stories, we meet a young man who is asked to perform a very interesting task. He is a gay man and he is asked to have this encounter with another gay man in order to steal a jewel from him. But something goes very, very wrong. In another story, we meet another man who has a fascination and deep and unsettling attraction to other people's suffering. And he discovers that he has a sexual attraction to his husband, Cancer. And in all of these three stories, we have a study of human depravity. You will encounter very disturbing, sometimes disgusting things that people think and do, and you feel that you're falling deeper and deeper in this pit of darkness. Hence, the title of my thumbnail for this video, Abandon All Hope, but because this is how I personally felt reading this book. There were some moments that I was so disgusted with humanity reading the story that I was seriously considering to abandon it. But at the same time, the writing style of Eric LaRocca really propelled me forward because it is so fluid. It really carries you through of this roller coaster of human depravity. And you want to persevere and see what actually will happen, what will be next. It is definitely not a book for everyone. And for me personally, I don't think that I will read other books by this author. But at the same time, I feel that Eric LaRocca is an absolute master of depicting human depravity. But unfortunately, just not my style of horror. I felt dirty and disgusted after reading this book, and I felt I hated men, which is not something I want to feel. But at the same time, if you are a fan of this exploration of human psyche, of what people are capable of, and you're not shying away from gruesome things, I think you will love it. When I was checking reviews of this book on Goodreads, it was love or hate situation. And I think for me, even though I wouldn't say that I personally hated this book, I definitely see appeal of it, but it is just not something I like. I would definitely say that I could recommend this book for the right reader. I'm just not this reader. This book contains a kaleidoscope of trigger warning, and I'm not personally even sure that if I'm allowed to speak about them on YouTube. I'll try to put them here on the screen so you can check it out and decide for yourself if you're comfortable with these topics. This book left me deeply, deeply unsettled. That's why I think for the right reader, it's actually a masterful horror book. It is just not the type of horror I personally like. And even though we have so many trigger warnings, as you can see on the screen, I don't really think that it is just a trigger warning dump. And even though all these trigger warnings are piled in the book, I think they did serve a purpose, really introducing you, really deepening you in this human depravity. But at the same time, I feel that the introduction of these three stories sometimes felt a little bit overwhelming because two of them didn't really lead anywhere and were existing in the book just for the atmosphere. I personally feel it could have been done maybe in a little bit of a less traumatic way. And it reminds me of a book that I read when I was a child, which is very disturbing because when I was a child, my parents had this book in our home library. And it was definitely not for children, but since my parents weren't really supervising my reading, I was free to read whatever I could find in our home library. I picked it up at some point and I read it, and it scarred me for life. And I feel this is the case with this book because some of the scenes described in this book probably will stay with me for years to come. So yes, these are my thoughts on this book. I think it's a very gruesome an exciting introduction into a roller coaster of human depravity. And if you're in the mood for this short, dark book, you may love it. But if you're like me and you're not really in the mood for this type of stories, maybe stay away, especially keeping in mind all the trigger warnings. I really hope you enjoyed this short book review. Please let me know if you already read this book, if you're planning to read it, or what your thoughts generally on the horror genre and what you like to read, because I would like to discuss it. I actually love horror genre, but as already mentioned, I am personally more inclined to read supernatural horror rather than gruesome, purely gruesome stuff. Please do let me know what you like to read and we can discuss in the comments. And I'll see you soon.